Okay guys, welcome to science today. Today we'll be doing all of our science right in our notebook. It's going to be a note-taking day along with a kind of listening day. We're going to look at some pages in our textbook and we're going to learn about the process skills that scientists use in order to conduct their investigations and their experiments. So these are skills that actually we use not just for science, but you might find that we use some of these for like math or reading. So they're skills that people, and we're the scientists in science, use in order to understand things better. And in science, it's to understand more about the things around us in the world better. So let's make sure you have your notebook, of course, your pencil, your highlighter, your scissors, your glue stick, your red science folder where we'll find our science notes, and your textbook because we'll be looking at some pages and I'll have you dog ear some pages that might help you when you go off and do your independent part today. So we're going to start by getting our notes pages. There's 2 pages that we'll be pulling out of our red folder. Okay, I'll make you dizzy for a second. So we are going to be skipping over some pages in our packet, so make sure you're pulling out the correct pages and you're kind of doing it with me. We're not getting rid of pages. We may come back to them at a later date, but we're going to skip over them. So let's unclip our packet. We're not going to pull this one out. We're not going to pull this one out. We're not going to pull this one out. See, told you we're going to skip a bunch. We're going to find the one that says Science Process Skills, and we're going to take him out. And right behind him, you'll see a chart that says Science Skill Definition, Examples to Use, and it has the skills over here, Observe, Infer, Predict. You're going to take him out. And those are the only 2 pages that we're going to take out for today. So you can clip your packet back together. So I'll show you what those pages are here in 1 second. Again, don't get rid of any of these other ones that I tell you to skip over. All right, so these are the 2 you should have pulled out of your folder. One says Science Process Skills at the top with your notes, and one looks like a big long chart with some process skills down the left, definitions down the middle, and then you'll be doing your independent thinking over here on the side. Okay, so let's get those trimmed, and then of course have your science text ready if we want to, not if, when we go into that, and I'll have you mark a few pages that will help you with your independent practice today. Okay, we're going to cut it out so it'll fit in our notebooks. So just like we do in math, we're going to cut along this rectangle that's there for you. And remember, you can pause this video at any time. Be sure you don't cut off that song at the bottom. I'm going to be singing today. Okay, so that guy's trimmed. Now this guy you're going to have to trim a little extra careful because he is long and we want to make sure he fits in our notebook the best he can. So at the very bottom, there's no line, but just trim so it's right. Don't cut that little line off because that's a word. And then cut right around the edges. You can trim a tiny bit off the top, but not too much. Do not cut off your titles at the top of these columns. Okay. All right, so we've got him trimmed. And if he doesn't fit in our notebook long ways, I'll show you another way. Yeah, we're gonna have to glue him a little different later, but I'll show you a neat way we can glue him so that he fits nicely on our left side. So this will be your left side. This is gonna be your right side. So of course we're gonna start with him. Okay, so you are learning what process skills, and the word process means understand. So when scientists want to study something closely about the world around them, they're gonna use some, they don't necessarily use them all at one time, specific skills to help them understand a bit better. So we're going to go through our 8 skills, filling in these definitions, okay? So you're going to want to make sure you have your highlighter because I'll highlight some key words. So when scientists, because I'm going to call you a scientist, when scientists, you look closely at an object or an event, you are actually doing what's called observe. And when you observe something, it doesn't just mean with your eyes. You are actually using all 5 senses. Now, not necessarily at one time. Like a scientist studying how a volcano is erupting or why or when surely would not use their sense of taste. Nobody's tasting a volcano. But they would definitely use their sense of seeing. So when we observe, we use our 5 senses. See, hear, touch, taste, or smell. Okay, so when we observe, it actually means all 5 senses. So that's one skill that scientists use in order to process something. Let's give ourselves another note for process. When anybody wants to process something, that means they want to understand something better. Okay, so when we want to process something, let's highlight process. Should have done that first. That just means we want to understand something a bit better. So one skill that scientists might use in order to understand whatever it is they're studying is called to observe. And observe can mean seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, or smelling. Now, when a scientist wants, let's underline those keywords. When a scientist wants to explain something that they have observed, then you can do what's called infer. Now, if you've been keeping up with your studies and all your courses, you might say, hey, we learned that in reading. Yes, readers infer also. That means a reader or a scientist just wants to explain something further that they have noticed. Okay? Another skill that scientists may need to use in their investigations or experiments is when they want to explain what they think will happen next. I bet you know what that skill is. When you explain what you think will happen next, you are making a prediction. So that skill is to predict. I'm thinking about meteorologists. You know, the weather guys we see on the TV, they're a type of scientist. They definitely use things that they've inferred or observed closely or explained further to make predictions about the following day's weather. All right, the next skill that scientists may use to understand something a little bit better that they're investigating or experimenting with is when you, the scientist, may classify objects or things. And that means you put things into groups according to their characteristics. Perhaps scientists may group a specific couple species of animals that they've never discovered before. They look at their characteristics or things about them to classify or group. Okay? Group. Another skill that scientists may use, it's actually got 3 parts to it, and that's when a scientist might want to find out how much or how long something is. We call that estimating. Oh, that's what you're doing in math today. Scientists may estimate. That means make a good guess on how long or how much something weighs. They may actually measure because they have a tool that they could measure how long something is. Or it might not be a measurable thing. Scientists may just count things. So that's kind of grouped as one process skill: estimating, measuring, and counting. When a scientist wants to show what something in real life looks like, so a scientist wants to show what something in real life looks like or how something may work, scientists may make a model of it. Lots of scientists do that. Some real popular models out there that we may use to study things further would be like a globe, okay? A scientist may use a globe to show what something in real life looks like Earth. It's too big to put in our hands, so a globe can help scientists or historians study it further. Perhaps a scientist builds a model on how a volcano erupts to show how that happens, or maybe what's happening on the inside. So making models is a process skill. Perhaps a scientist may need to or want to compare and contrast two things or two objects or events. And usually that's how we tell if how they're alike and different. Or events are alike or different. You've heard those words before, compare and contrast. Scientists, this might be a brand spanking new word for you. Two words put together. Scientists have to be really careful about studying, using a lot of these process skills to get through their investigation or their experiment. But then at the end or during their investigation or experiment, scientists want to make an operational, this is fancy words, definition for something. Whoops, that should be a T, not enough. And you might say, what in the world? I've never heard of that. Well, you already do this, and that means that you use your own words to tell about something or what something can do. So really, scientists, readers, writers, mathematicians, you're making operational definitions all the time. It's basically when you use your own words, not the words of somebody else, to tell about something or what something can do. And that is what we're going to write up here. It's when you will figure out a meaning. So if you look it up in the dictionary, that wouldn't be an operational definition. But you might use a dictionary to observe. That means you're seeing a definition, you're inferring, you're going to try to explain something that you observed, and you're going to put it in your own words. Okay, so let's highlight our process skills, and I'm going to teach you this song. So the process skills that scientists use, that you are responsible for being pretty comfy cozy and knowing, are scientists might observe, and that means you're using your 5 senses to conduct part of your investigation. Scientists will do what's called inferring, and that means when you want to explain something you observed. Scientists will predict, and that's where you tell what you think will happen next. That's kind of like your hypothesis. Scientists may need to do what's called classify, and that means you put things into groups according to their similarities, which are their characteristics. Maybe what they look like, maybe I'm thinking of animals. Some animals use gills to breathe, others use lungs to breathe. You could classify those groups of animals. Scientists may need to estimate, measure, or count things. That's another skill they may use to tell how much or how long something is. Scientists may want to make a smaller version of something to show how it looks in real life or how it works, but maybe it's too big to put in your hand. I gave you the example of a globe. That would be a model. Scientists also compare and contrast. That means they tell how objects or events are alike and different. And scientists may make operational definitions, and that means when they figure out a meaning to something and they put it in their own words. You know what? We're going to highlight own words too. You might tell about something or what something can do, but you're using your own words. That's operational definitions. Okay, so here's a fun song for you to get stuck in your head, kind of like our multiplication songs, to remember the science process skills. And it goes to the tune, She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain. So yes, Miss Preston is gonna sing for you. And anybody that's in your room listening to this video is gonna hear me sing. It's, she'll be coming round the mountain when she comes, yee-haw. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes, yee-haw. She'll be coming round the mountain, she'll be coming round the mountain, she'll be coming round the mountain when she comes, yee-haw. That's the tune. So here it is with the words that are all your process skills that you're responsible for studying and learning about as a scientist. If you do investigations, don't forget that you must observe, infer, and predict. Classifying and counting, estimating, and measuring are some skills that we use to investigate. There are several more to add before we're done. Making models surely is a lot of fun. Comparing objects or events in order to make any sense. Operational definitions aren't intense. Yee-haw. Okay. I'll sing it for you one more time, and then you're going to go find someone in your house to sing this song to. That's part of your assignment. If you do investigations, don't forget that you must observe, infer, and predict. Classifying and counting, estimating, and measuring are some skills that we use to investigate. There are several more to add before we're done. Making models surely is a lot of fun. Comparing objects or events in order to make any sense. Operational definitions aren't intense. Yee-haw! Okay, there you have it. Mrs. Preston's debut of the Science Skills song. So all your skills are in that song. So go ahead and highlight them and go find someone. Now you can use your notebook. You can bring this with you and practice this song over and over so that you are kind of putting in your mind the skills that we will be using this year as scientists and that scientists use out in the big real world. Okay, let's go ahead and do our next page, then we'll glue it all in together, and that's this guy. So we're gonna take some notes that we took on here, and we're gonna put them into the definitions for them over here, and then we're gonna think of times in the real world when we might observe something in science, or we might infer something about science. Okay, and you'll have a little independent work to do on your own. So let's look at observe. When we observe, that means that we look closely at an object or an event using your, we're going to put 5 senses. Okay, so what's something that we might observe? In science, that means using our 5 senses. And we're gonna put a bullet. So I'm thinking I might observe a fish tank. I might just look at a fish tank and gather some thoughts of what's in there. I'm looking closely. I'm using my sight. Or perhaps a zoo exhibit. Now at a zoo exhibit, I'm definitely using my sight, but I might also be using my hearing because I could hear things in a zoo exhibit. So your independent piece is going to be to find 2 more things that you could observe as a scientist. So science stuff, things in the real world around us. What are some things you would look closely at as a scientist that you may use, not may use, you will use at least one of your senses, if not a couple. You think of 2 more. Okay, inferring. Again, I'm using my notes that I just took to help me fill these in, so hopefully those are next to you. Inferring. When a scientist infers, that means when you want to explain, you have to fit 2 words here. To explain something using your, I love this word, schema. And schema means what you already know about something. You have some previous knowledge, prior knowledge. So when we infer, we want to explain something using our prior knowledge or our schema and what we've observed. So we want to explain something, perhaps something up here. So I'm thinking that if I look outside, I might infer, that means explain, something that I'm observing, and I have schema on the current weather outside. I could make an inference on the current weather outside. I have prior knowledge on if the clouds are getting gray that I could maybe explain. It's going to be a yucky day. I might also infer looking at somebody. You know, I'm looking at their face. I see their facial expressions. I could infer or explain based on prior knowledge or what I already know, my schema, someone's feelings. So when we want to explain something based on prior knowledge or schema and something we've observed, like using our 5 senses for something, that's called inferring. You're going to think of 2 more things that you might infer about, explain something using prior knowledge and what you've observed of the world around you. Okay, predict. When you want to explain what you think, what you think, oh no, this should be will, sorry. I already have what there. What you think will happen next, that's called predicting. So what are some things we would predict in science? Remember, if I'm going fast, you should be pausing and catching yourself up. Meteorologists predict the 7-day forecast. They make a good guess at what the weather will be like for the week. Some scientists need to predict when a volcano may erupt. Or where we live, perhaps when a hurricane or where a hurricane will hit. You think of 2 more things that you think scientists may predict about the world around them. Okay, scientists classify, and that means you put things into groups according to their characteristics. That's things that they look like or have in common. What are some things we might classify? I know my house, we classify or group objects we want to recycle. We put the recycled stuff in one bin and the trash in another bin. That would be classifying. Scientists in the world classify species of animals. They put them into groups based on their characteristics. All right, you think of 2 other things you might classify in the world around you, or scientists might classify or put things into groups. All right, when scientists count, estimate, or measure. So count, estimate, measure. That's what the CEM stands for. When we count, that means we use numbers to say how much or how many there is of something. When we estimate, it means we give an answer based on schema. That means we can't really count, but we can maybe make a little guess. And when we actually measure, that usually means we're using a tool to say how long, how big, or how much weight something has. So count, estimate, measure. So what are some things in science we might count, estimate, or measure? We might measure someone's, or we'll put something's height or weight. We might count, estimate, or measure the growth of a plant. I'm thinking that there's lots of scientists out there counting how many species of certain animals are left, and that's how we get our endangered and extinct lists out there. So that could be an example of counting. So you think of 2 more things. I actually just gave you one that scientists may count, estimate, or actually measure in the world around them. All right, making models. When you want to show what something in real life looks like or how it works, scientists may make a model. So what are some things or examples of models scientists might make? This is the one I said in the lesson. Globes are a model. What's something else a scientist might make a model of? How about a model of a skeleton? We have one in here in our class. I name him Fred. So when something's a little bit too big to have in our hands, scientists may choose to make a model of it so they can study it further. So what are two other things in science that maybe scientists would want to create a model or make something in real life or show how it works because it's just too big to have in your hand? How about comparing? When a scientist compares, that means we tell how objects or events are alike and different. If you want, you can add the word contrast here because they go together. Compare and contrast. Contrast means different, compare means alike. What are some things scientists might compare and contrast? I'm thinking they might compare and contrast some animal species. Or how about plant species? You think of two more things that scientists in the world might compare or contrast. And then making operational definitions are when you use your own words to tell about something or what it can do. So what is something about science that a scientist would need to use their own words to tell about something or what it can do? How about when a scientist explains how a volcano, is there an E on volcano? No. Erupts. So when they're explaining it in their own words, that would be an operational definition. Or how about explaining how rainbows form? That would be an example of an operational definition. It's when a scientist uses their own words to tell about something. All right, since we kind of had to cut this box off, you just have to find one more thing or think of one more thing that a scientist might make operational definitions for. Okay, we're going to get these glued into our science notebook. And then we're going to catch up on our table of contents that we've kind of forgotten about. I think we forgot about last week. So make sure you're not skipping pages. And I'm going to make you dizzy and lift you up. Beam me up, Scotty. Okay, so the last thing that you should have in your notebook is a left and a right side for the scientific method. And the flip book on the left, completed. That's what you submitted last week, your completed flip book, explaining the steps to the scientific method in your own words that we didn't get to. So you had to do the last 3 flaps. I did the first 3 flaps with you. So turn your page, don't skip. Make sure you don't have pages stick. And we're gonna glue him to the right. I'm gonna lift you up a little bit further. Okay, and we're going to date our pages. So this guy's on our right. Today is the 15th. This will be page 9 for me, so that goes at the bottom. And this guy should be on your left side. Now he's a little long. See how he sticks up at the top, so watch what Mrs. Preston's gonna do. We're gonna turn them this way. And we're only gonna put glue, like right in the middle. Okay, and you should be okay to still write on this. If you glue him down like this, and then you can fold him in, he'll stay nice and tucked neatly in your notebook, and you can still finish your independent work. You just turn your notebook this way, and you can fill in your 2 examples that you're gonna do for independent work of each of the skills. And hey, you might have to look some of these skills up in your textbook. You have a glossary in the back, so you could look up these skills. Like let's look up infer. If you look up the word infer in your glossary, here it is, inferences. You could look on page 8 and 9 and it might tell you more about things you could infer. Let's look at observe. Observations. There's 4 and 5, 27, 28, 29. All those pages will tell you more about observations. So you could use, not your glossary, your index. You might be able to use your glossary too, because that gives you definitions. But your index pages, you could be looking for your process skill words and turning to those pages and learning more. So you can use your textbook. But you're to be thinking of 2 other examples of times where a scientist might observe, infer, predict, classify, count, estimate, or measure, make a model, compare and contrast, or make operational definitions, and follow my lead. I did a couple with you. You're going to think of your own. But if you glue it sideways, then you can tuck it in. It stays nice and safe. Let's date our pages. Okay, date at the top. This is going to be page, whoops, this is actually 9. This guy's 10. Okay, your page numbers should be going in order. Okay, so you're gonna be finishing this chart for your independent practice. Remember, this will be due on Thursday. By Thursday, you should have this done and submitted, and you will submit a picture of this chart, completed, of course, with your own examples into this assignment, okay? Just want a picture of this chart. All right, let's turn to our table of contents and get caught up before I let you go. So the last thing I wrote was our tools. So we're a little behind. Last week we're behind. So that was on page 5 and 6. So we need to add what is the scientific method. And that was on 9, 10, and we're just going to title it Scientific Method. And that will be on pages 7 and 8, so we can do it like that. And then let's add today's. Today's we're going to title Science Process Skills. And that's for today. So today is the 15th. And your process skills pages are 9 over here and 10. Okay. So let's just recap on what you're working on today. You have your notes on the process skills. You have your textbook that you can look in the back on your index pages, and you will find the word of the skill you're looking for and turn to those pages. It will tell you more about them. And your left side is your chart where you have another definition of each skill on top of what's on your right side over here. And we came up with 2 examples, or I did, to show how this skill could be used in science, real examples, and you're to think of 2 other examples for each skill. And then you will take a picture of this page, and that is what will be submitted as your assignment for today. Okay? All right, good luck on learning and investigating further all the process skills that scientists use in science.